This is, I think, my preferred spot at the moment for these talks. But like all things, subject to anicca, change, uncertainty, impermanence. Where I sit is rather as a result of the conditions that surround me. If it's raining, I'm of course inside. If it's too hot, I'm under the veranda. But now it's just the right time of year, position of the sun, the climate, to be sitting under the shade of these palms and this very tall tree, of which type I'm not sure. So hello and welcome, continuing with your comments and questions, remaining from last week, I suppose now. The first comment: some lay people understand that Buddha preached the concept of anatta. The Buddha's teachings are only the middle path. All teachings can be destroyed by looking at them from the perspective of anatta. Don't forget the middle path. Well, I'm not sure I meant to read that one out because it's not really a question, is it? The Buddha and his teachings. You say the Buddha preached. He gave discourses, talks. Preaching is more commanding. This is the way it is. But the Buddha's priority was on the student receiving information sufficient to enable them to practice and establish and see for themselves the answers. So rather than saying this should be done, this is how it is in that preaching format, the Buddha is saying try this for yourself and see what your experience of it is. And he gives us an idea of how that what results may come from that. And the three characteristics of existence are very much a part of right view. So the beginning of the Noble Eightfold Path. Now you're right in the sense that the Buddha, in the first desana, first discourse, he spoke of that middle path, having left a life of luxury and taken a very ascetic path of very harsh, austere practices. He found that the only way to attain to enlightenment, and this was through his own experience, attaining to nibbana, was through the middle way. So not a life of luxury, not a life of austere asceticism, somewhere in the middle. Now that middle is varying in everyone's understanding because, of course, what might be someone's idea of luxury might be someone's idea of hell. What might be someone's idea of hell might be someone's idea of okayness, sufficient, enough. So we all have different opinions on that, depending on our cultural background and understanding, upbringing, nature and nurture, these things. But essentially, falling within the parameters of the Noble Eightfold Path is to be following the practice which is to be considered the middle way. So I don't think I've quite understood your comment here, but the Buddha did teach about anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, and anatta, not self. That is, everything being out of our control. We are not these physical bodies or thinking brains. But in order to see that clearly, we need to become awakened fully, to become enlightened, to at least attain to really understand Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view, and eradicate that. Therefore, seeing clearly anatta, we need to practice the middle way. But he didn't leave it at that. There's just the middle way, because as I say, that's infinitely movable. depending on your perspective. He gave us the Noble Eightfold Path, a direct way, a direct path, which, yes, is straight down the middle, but gives us specific parameters within which to live our lives, to become awakened through keeping sila, moral virtue, practicing meditation, samadhi, and developing wisdom, panya, to see all this. So that is not forgetting the middle path. It's knowing that our practice should be not living a life of luxury, not living a life of austerity, somewhere in between. Now, this doesn't preclude lay practitioners from having comfortable lives, enjoying what they consider the middle way. They may have some form of renunciation. Someone living a life of opulence with many luxury vehicles might decide one day, I only need one vehicle, and this is still renunciation. So, reduction in any sense towards the middle path is to some extent nekama, this quality, this Pali word meaning renunciation. Can you say a little about probably not, because I can't even make it out. Can you say a little about Sat Sin chords? Please, I brought these are that's a different name for it. I just know them as blessing braids or bits of string. Yes, that people have tied around their wrists. Yes, okay. I bought a pra somdej amulet, and it came with a few white cords. All I can find out is you wear them at least 5 days or until they naturally fall off. So I can't really say much about that. It's not a necessary part of practice. These are additional cultural practices, rites and rituals, beliefs, even superstitions. You'll see many people in Buddhist countries walking around with bits of dirty old string around their wrist. This is because in the monastery, the monks, when giving the blessings, will hold this one length of cord tied perhaps to the Buddha Rupa behind us, and then held by all of the Sangha right through to the most junior monks, and then maybe even around to the lay people, lay practitioners. And the blessings are given, and then eventually this is wound up, cut into short lengths, and tied around the wrists of the participants as a reminder of those blessings you've been given. It doesn't mean that this piece of string really contains any magical qualities. If it helps you to believe that, then by all means, but this is not something that comes from the teachings of the Buddha or is a practice that we can direct you to in the Noble Eightfold Path. It is ritualistic, it is a devotional practice, but think of some of these things as mindfulness reminders. If you've got a little piece of string around your wrist, it might just remind you every time you get a glimpse of your visit to the monastery and the blessings you've received. Now, those blessings, again, don't have magical properties. They're not going to bring you good fortune in themselves, but they're the mutual wish of the Sangha and yourself or yourselves whom are visiting the Sangha to share in good fortune, good health, long lives, and ultimately the attainment to freedom from suffering in this lifetime and Nibbana. A mutual wish, and therefore an offering within that mutual wish of mutual support. The lay folks supporting the Sangha and the Sangha supporting the lay folks. So it is chanting, it is a happy and joyous occasion, and it is nice to have such a reminder. As far as amulets are concerned, you'll see in my morning chanting, I have a similar to, as you describe it, amulet. These are more a Thai practice, a Thai thing. Mine contains, I don't know the name of the monk, but an image of a Buddha, and underneath some relics of a supposed arahant monk, and therefore is supposed to bring good fortune and good luck. I keep it as out of respect. It was offered to me as a gift. and it is an attractive thing. Wherever I'm staying, it's hanging on my little Buddha Rupa shrine, along with my mala. Again, I don't use my mala for any particular practices, rites or rituals. It's just something at the very initial stages of my practice when I was first researching Buddhism. I made it. I got some sandalwood beads and some string, strung them together in the prescribed fashion, and that is my mala. It subsequently had probably a couple of changes of string, but it's the original beads, and those are a reminder of the time that I've been practicing and studying Buddhism. But yes, just a mindful reminder. There's no significance to them. They may hold, you hear this expression, things that have sentimental value. That is it. It's sentimental. It's mental formation, sankharas. It's not phenomena arising. It's phenomena we create of our own volition. We choose to put such a thing that we value in a respectful place. It reminds me of the generosity of the gift I've received, for one, the amulet, and it reminds me of my dedication to the practice, for as long as it's been, by the significance of the one common thing prior to my ordination that I still take from place to place and has, been with me as I've been practicing Buddhism. Your bits of string, how long you leave them on your wrist, it doesn't matter. They will fall off. You might need to take them off. It's up to you. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing specifically special about them. Other practices, other traditions might say otherwise. Okay. When we are focusing on the breath, but thoughts come up, do you ignore the thoughts? How do you focus on breath while letting thoughts come and go? Thank you. So your mind wanders off and suddenly you're thinking. You've lost mindfulness on the breath. This is the practice. Samasati, right mindfulness, at first. You can do this throughout all of your daily activities to exercise your mindfulness, the power of your mind to be focused on one thing. When you're not having to think about something else, if you're just walking, bring your awareness to the walking, the stepping right, stepping left, or the breath, the breathing in, the breathing out. This is developing mindfulness, not letting your mind wander into the past or into the future, worrying about things that have happened that you cannot change, or imagining what might happen next that may never happen at all. Just staying in the present moment. This is mindfulness, samasati. And then during meditation, we're practicing samadhi, sama-samadhi, single-pointed awareness, focus on that meditation object. So in your case, as it's the breath, keep watching the breath as you breathe in and you breathe out. Occasionally your mind will wander, a thought will come up. That's when you've lost mindfulness. When you eventually realize you've been thinking and you start watching the breath again, you're back on mindfulness. The longer you practice this, the better you will become at it, until such a time you will not necessarily ever lose mindfulness of the breath. You will progress from just observing the breath to becoming deeply absorbed into samadhi. Still mindful of the breath, but no thoughts arising. But primarily, before that, the hindrances, those obstacles of desire, wanting, obstacles of aversion, not wanting, laziness, restlessness and worry and doubt, you'll be secluded from, or they will reduce significantly to be less intrusive, just interrupting your meditation on occasions. But this will gradually become less and less until you're completely free of obstacles and interruption, just focusing on the breath. Then you will become very absorbed in that. Like being very absorbed into reading a book that's of great interest, things that go on around you, you will not necessarily notice. You won't be able to drag yourself away from the pages. But when we can become that absorbed in something perhaps of less initial interest, less initial stimulation, but of a more mundane nature, just observation of breathing in and breathing out, in all its simplicity, then we can see the beauty and freedom of that form of relaxation and are more inclined towards that being our default when doing nothing else. When we have nothing else to do, we will default to that meditation object. This comes only with practice. The more you practice, the easier it will become. So that's the answer to your question. How do you focus on the breath whilst thoughts are coming and going? Know that they're impermanent. They will come, they will go, and come back to the breath. It hasn't gone away. The breath is always there. What has gone away is your awareness, your conscious awareness of the breath. So bring that conscious awareness. It'll come back to the breath when you stop thinking. But the minute you get the opportunity to be back on your meditation object, let that happen and stay with it. And it'll keep happening. You'll keep getting interruptions. But the more you practice, the less that will be the case. Isn't the thing that knows the atta? Wouldn't a knower go against the anatta doctrine? No. In the sense of the anatta, and I've spoken against this at some length recently, but the principle of anatta, self, the perception of self, is that of the five khandhas. So watch my talk about the five khandhas, and I explain how different that is to the mind. The knower, oh dear, this big dog's come. Oh, it's okay, it's going. Don't you pee on me. Go, 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 go. So, in the hopes it's not going to pee on me. No, 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 go on. Which dog are you? You're not one I know, are you? Are you the one? Hmm? Yeah. What are we to do now? Come on, go, sit. This is as wild dog. It was as wild as they get. They're not very wild, are they? I think you're the wild dog. You're not the local dog. We're going to have to maybe interrupt this talk. If I ignore him. What are we talking about? Yeah, so self, five khandhas, is the self, this thinking, this physical body and this thinking brain. What we perceive to be ourself is not that which knows. That's the mind. That's separate from that. And I do talk about this quite often at some length. So you're bringing into it, where you use these different words like the atta and the anatta doctrine. A lot of this is coming from other philosophies. This is not the teachings of the Buddha. This is not contained in the suttas. So you can hear some of these words that are conceived as not self and misinterpret them in conjunction with the teachings of the Buddha. We're simply coming to know that we're not these physical bodies and these thinking brains. And however well we develop these thinking physical bodies and educate these thinking brains, all that will be gone, is subject to aging, sickness and death, deterioration, entropy, impermanence, and is the cause of suffering. That is anatta, out of our control. That is this realization. That which knows this is separate from vijnana consciousness, that is experiencing sense consciousness and the feelings of this physical body and thoughts arising in this thinking brain, is separate from that vijnana consciousness is citta, the mind, that which knows. So as it's the teaching of the Buddha, it's not against any doctrine. In fact, we don't have doctrinal things in Buddhism. It is not a doctrinal religion. There aren't these rules. There is these guidelines that the Buddha points us towards discovering for ourselves. So if you don't get that, if you don't understand that, or to the point you disagree with that, that's also okay. But if you were to practice in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path, keeping the precepts and practicing meditation, you'd soon come to see what it is the Buddha is talking about. See for yourself. He's not asking you to believe anything or to accept a doctrine, but try it for yourself. That's all. And I'm only passing on from my own experience, having put these teachings into practice as best I can, what it is that one might come to see through this practice. It's nothing more than that. It's not for debate, it's not for discussion, because that's unnecessary. That can be fun also, but that isn't the practice. The practice is just to sit and wait and see for yourself. Has my friend gone? Yes. Oh. Another thing about what is the artifact like a japa mala, what we see in the video? So this is where I'm washing some robes and my mala is in the bucket. Well, yeah, it's not a japa mala. A japa mala is the same as the Buddhist malas you see, so many beads, 108 beads usually. I'm not sure how many a japa mala, I think it's the same. And that japa practice is a totally different practice, usually associated with Hare Krishna practice or some form of, I don't know, other mantra practice, whereby they're burning away defilements by keep repeating the same mantra, such as Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Krishna, so many thousands of times a day, and they count this off using the bead. And this is one use you can use a mala for, counting things. The only thing I've used it for ever practically is for counting how many times I've walked up and down. So in the absence of clocks, you can roughly time your walking meditation to 45 minutes if you go a full circumference of a mala, back and forth 20 to 30 steps. So I've used it for that purpose, so I don't walk for too long or not long enough, because there's no clocks in the forest, so you're just walking up and down aimlessly otherwise. So it's a good way to just keep an eye on the time you're walking if you're going to be going back to sitting meditation. But if you have no time constraints, as I don't, it isn't really necessary, so it just hangs on my shrine. And it gets mouldy wherever I'm staying. As I said, it's come with me through all my places I've stayed, and in the rainy season it gets mouldy. And the solution we dye our robes with has antiseptic properties, disinfecting properties, and is boiling hot. So if you put the mala beads in there, in the container with your robes, the mold comes off, is not anaesthetized, it's kind of sterilized, whatever, and stops it growing back, stops the beads rotting, and kind of soaks them, gives them some longevity of life. And it's lasted a very, very long time now. I've had that for 10 years since I made it, so it's still in good order. Although, as I say, I've probably changed the string countless times. So it's an example like this is the idea of self. It's like if you think there is a self, it's like a broom or like a mala. If you change the beads on a mala, is it the same mala? If you change the string on a mala, is it the same mala? If you change the head of a broom, the end, the brushing end, is it the same broom? If you change the stick of the broom, is it the same broom? Once you've changed the stick and you've changed the head, it's not the same broom, is it? But it's still your broom. It's still your mala. Same with our bodies. That's the understanding. It's very simple, isn't it, of anatta. When we realize that all our bodies are continually changing cells, and all our brain is a continually changing process, then we can see that that is not a self. It doesn't contain any substance. It's like a bubble. So it's insubstantial, it's transient, it's impermanent, unsatisfactory, and it is not self. Okay, anicca dukkha anatta. But there is that which knows that, and that is not of this conditioned world. It's not part of the five khandhas, but it is conditioned by it, affected by it, and is affected and picks up momentum as a result of of causes and conditions we put in place through our actions of body, speech and mind. All right. Do you agree that you violate ahimsa every time you take a shower, take a step, swallow your saliva, cleanse your bathroom? So ahimsa means doing no harm. again, from another language, another tradition, and is not a concept we apply in Buddhism, because it is not practical to do so. We try to do no harm. Our intention is to do no harm, so no killing intentionally. That is not to say that through those actions you describe, you're going to microbial things, bacteria, parasites might get damaged or killed in the process. You cannot be responsible for that. It's not your intention to do so. It's just an unfortunate result of living in samsara. So then you go on with that whole question about all kinds of things, non-dualism and dualism and all of this. What is your actual question? So you're saying that the Buddha's wrong and the Buddha didn't have information about the nature of reality that we have today. So the Buddha, in fact, had information about the nature of reality that we have today as much then as we do now. We have some other scientific discoveries we have discovered subsequently, but that doesn't mean the Buddha doesn't allude to those and even describe them in the texts, in the suttas, in Buddhist cosmology. He speaks of many world systems, and in the Vinaya Pitaka, in terms of how we go about living in our lives within the thousands of rules, everything is done to direct us towards a life of doing no harm, so taking into account all sentient beings. So he might not have invented penicillin or other discoveries of a microbial nature, but nevertheless the teachings still apply as directly and are as relevant today in that context with that information as they were then, because they're not contrary to that. When we discover, yes, that there are microbes living in our bodies that we will be doing harm to by simply living, then that is knowledge that may be specifically under a microscope in this one particular lifetime out of the many lifetimes through comings and goings of evolution and advancement and degradation that the Buddha has already experienced. But even within this one lifetime of his, it's still about intention. And you cannot do anything about parasites that have lived within you that you might, as a result of taking some medication, for instance, destroy unintentionally. So it's pretty cut and dry. It's about intention, the moral basis of that. So, but you know, if you don't agree, that's fine. Go back to your own ideas. You can't live on this planet without swallowing, without bathing. It's essential to do these things. So maybe you don't have to bathe as often, and you can be very careful about certain detergents you use, of course. I'm very careful about my washroom, what goes in there, what goes down the toilet, because it's a place where many things, I've got frogs live in my toilet, so I can't throw too many or anything by way of detergents and damaging products that might harm the frogs that I actually know live in that hole in the ground. So I'm very careful about what I throw down there. So this is how we can live for everyone's benefit, being considerate, being mindful in all of our activities. How do you choose how much food to keep and eat to sustain you for another 24 hours? As we are learning, how should we use the sensation of hunger to guide us? So I don't keep any food to sustain me for the next 24 hours. When I say that this meal that I'm eating is or the food that I receive is to sustain me for the next 24 hours, it's what I actually eat out of my bowl. So you come to know, after so many years of just eating out of the one bowl, the one time, how much you need, how much your body needs to get through the next 24 hours. My days from one day to another, 1 month, 1 year, are pretty much the same. So I'm not usually doing much more in any one particular day than another day, so resting more or active more to require more energy. So pretty much the same amount of rice, dal, any vegetables I might get, curries I might get, fruits or anything else, breads in my bowl is going to be the same each day. But none is kept or stored. What I eat is enough. Sometimes it might not be enough and I'll be hungry. Sometimes it'll be too much. I might be a bit too greedy, eat a bit too much, and I'll feel a little bit full and lethargic as a result of that. The way, there are specific measurements the Buddha sort of describes that we should eat just one mouthful less than we think we need, you know, so don't overfill our mouths when we're eating. Many prescribed ways of eating mindfully in the training rules. But essentially we should eat what we need, and then that is enough. So it's not a case of choosing how much food to keep and eat. We just eat what we have in our bowl. Now I get given, my only meal is provided for me on my alms round, pindapata, each day. What's offered to me goes into my bowl, and the surplus I give away to neighbouring families, and what's left is enough for me to eat and be finished until the same happens again tomorrow. Mostly it's enough. I get it right. If you don't, then it's only another 24 hours or so till the next time you eat again. Using hunger when you're training, as you say, to guide us is, yes, if you are hungry, you can recognize the feeling of an empty tummy. There's a very big difference between hunger and wanting something to eat. This is what we can learn from real hunger, is really feeling faint and actually on the point of collapse. This is when your body really needs some sugar or something to just keep it going. And we're allowed the chatumadu, the 4 honeys, which are butter, well, clarified butter, ghee, something like that, honey, jaggery, which is raw sugar, or oil, those 4 things. So clarified butter, honey, sugar or oil, that just a spoonful of is enough to keep you going, to stop you passing out, fainting. It's also very advanced medicinally, because people who insist that they must have a meal in the afternoon because they're diabetic and things, actually those 4 honeys, the chatumadu, are, you know, medically, I understand, sufficient for someone with that condition to eat just once a day in the morning and then have some honey in the afternoon, some butter. Doesn't matter, they can have as much as is necessary, but we don't normally need much, and it's not very nice on its own, so you don't overindulge in the afternoon. But they're the allowable medicines. There are some other allowable tonics like you can have, like tea, coffee, black tea with with sugar, coffee with sugar, black coffee, and you know, this gets extended in some places to a whole menu. It's not necessary. The principle of eating once a day is to just be doing that, but if you think you're going to pass out, I've been on some occasions where I've been travelling and I have felt like I'm going to pass out in the airport or on the train or on the bus, and you can usually get a fizzy drink, a sweet fizzy drink like soda, Coca-Cola even, something like that, and that'll just stop you passing out. It's all you need. And a spoonful of butter or a lump of sugar is just as good. So Sama Samadhi, which you talked in this video, is most challenging and most difficult part in my meditation practice. Not be thinking, not be tired, not be anything. How can I try more effective and throw away unnecessary thoughts? So I think I've just spoken about that, haven't I? You've just got to keep trying, keep practicing. Don't try too hard. This is where people get a little bit wrong. They really try hard and they concentrate, give themselves a headache. They really scrunch up their faces and sit there. Don't think, focus on the meditation object. You know, just sit and do nothing for as long as you can. Preferably set a timer for 1 hour and make a determination to just sit still and as much as possible watch the breath for 1 hour. And whatever comes along in your mind or externally to interrupt that, just ignore it. If you have to do something, if you have to get up, then do so. But it's usually unnecessary. As long as you've picked a suitable time, just keep doing it. It may be very difficult at first, as you're describing, all sorts of obstacles, these hindrances of essential desire, aversion, laziness, restlessness and worry and doubt will be coming up to stop you meditating. But just know them as that. Know them as wanting, not wanting, a physical pain, know it's a physical pain, but keep bringing your attention back to the breath, just as I've already described. What do you think about Advaita Vedanta and the idea that consciousness is the ultimate reality? Now, I don't know anything about Advaita Vedanta. There was another comment, I don't know whether it's the next one or another one in these comments, but it said that I'm completely wrong about the Advaita Vedanta. And I don't know what video it was referring to, but I would be completely wrong about it because I don't know anything about it. So I'm not an Advaita Vedanta practitioner. I can't even pronounce it correctly. I'm a Buddhist monk. I'm a bhikkhu. And that is what I'm teaching about, or talking about. So as far as what do I think about it, I don't think about it because I don't know anything about it. And there's no need for me to find out about what their views on ultimate reality are, because I can, through the help of the teachings of the Buddha, see the nature of reality, that is, that all things are impermanent, unsatisfactory and non-self. See that for myself by practicing meditation with the foundation of moral virtue. I beg your blessings. Oh, I have seen you before with a mala. Why are these mala ones coming up all the time? Is there room in Theravada school for them? So again, I think I've spoken about the mala. It's hanging on my shrine, which is just a shelf on the wall with my Buddha Rupa and some candles and a couple of other little baby Buddha Rupas, which have some sort of significance in that they were given to me as gifts from other monks, other Sangha members and such like, and I keep them to remind me of those occasions and those people, those fellow practitioners, and wish those fellow practitioners well every time I see them. These are mindfulness reminders. That's the significance, and that's all they need to be. There's no other significance in Theravada Buddhism with regards to malas and the use of. As I said, you can use them for counting things if necessary, but that's all. Oh, with all respect, this guy's understanding of Advaita Vedanta is flawed. He seems to think the idea of infinite self, blah, 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 and then a whole big thing about Atman and all of these things, how wrong I am. So yes, I'm absolutely wrong, and to fully concede that I'm not speaking anything about these subjects. And I know you do at the end of your comment bring in reference to some teachings of Tibetan Buddhist nature that you say are similar to Advaita, but I'm not even a Tibetan Buddhist or practicing Tibetan Buddhism. So I can't comment on that, or won't comment on that, only to say thank you for watching, and sorry if you misunderstood what this channel is about, but it's only about Buddhism, really, and that is in the sense of Theravada Buddhism from the Pali Canon, the Sutta Pitaka, and I do share with others my experience as living as a monk in accordance with not only following the Noble Eightfold Path, but with the support of the Vinaya Pitaka, the monastic code of conduct, our rules, which are vast in number, condensed down to just 227 for our own precepts, but really those even are just supportive of the main precepts that all lay practitioners are keeping. The 5 precepts of refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and taking of intoxicants. But you should all, if you can, try and at least once a week, or at least twice a month maybe, or at the very least once a month, keep 8 precepts. So don't eat in the afternoon, refrain from entertainment and beautification and lounging around on soft furnishings. This way you can dedicate a whole 24 hours, or even 12 hours, let's say, in a week or a couple of times a month or once a month to just your practice, just whether it's sitting in formal meditation, practicing walking meditation, maybe listening to Dharma, reading suttas, or just reflection. It is something different to your ordinary everyday life, like a holy day without the religiosity, but solely dedicated to support your practice. And it will go a long way to supporting your practice throughout the rest of that period until the next time, throughout the rest of that month, that week, however long, often you can keep those 8 precepts. Now monks, they take on the additional, so 219 there, precepts thereof really, and roughly speaking, to really support the keeping of those 8 precepts, or 10 when we first move into a monastery, when 2 split to become 9, and then we don't use money either. Now monks don't use money, but there are expenses, and those expenses are met by the kind support of lay practitioners who are able to donate to a trust, and then lay supporters can help when it's required in purchasing things that are necessary. So, like cat food, so which isn't necessary, but it does help these little animals. On that note, I'll just read this last comment here as it's staring at me. Bhante, since you're in Sri Lanka, why not visit Narayana? I wish to visit that great monastery someday. Why not? I don't go around visiting places. There are many, many monasteries. I've visited the local ones once when I arrived here, after to pay respects to the incumbents there, as they call them, the abbots, so the monk in charge, the senior monk there, and they've been to visit me. That's enough. Now there are hundreds, if not thousands, of great monasteries, temples throughout Sri Lanka. Now, I know the one you mean. It's a very large, and it's so-called forest monastery, but it's a very large organization, a very large, well-supported temple. Many people, both tourists, foreigners, visitors to the country, and local lay supporters visiting it. They don't need me visiting it, and I don't have any reason to visit it either. So that's why not, because I've no reason to. There are many other holy sites with relics and things, some of which I visited here in Sri Lanka because lay people wanted to take me there. But I had no real urge or desire to go there myself. I've come here to practice, stay in this beautiful spot to be able to practice most of the day, just meditation and contemplation, keeping sila, developing samadhi and panya, wisdom. So that is my purpose here. And it's a supportive environment for that purpose. The causes and conditions that surround me as a result of me being here are conducive to my practice. I don't need to go on visits to see people or places, which are just that, people and places. You can practice anywhere where you can either support yourself comfortably or be supported. As a monk, we can't support ourselves, so we need to be supported. And it's easier for me to be supported here by way of what we need every day, that is food, without complication. Literally walking up the road and back with my bowl is enough food for me. I can't do that so easily in my own country. There would need to be all sorts of formal donations made and times for people to arrive and all sorts. It gets very complicated. So that's why I'm here. I'm not really a tourist or someone wanting to go and visit all of the monasteries. But you should, if you wish to, go and visit all the monasteries you'd like to here someday. I hope you'd get that opportunity because it really is a beautiful place. And the country as a whole, I mean, as should you all. So on that note, be happy and stay well. Until next time, Sukhi Hotu.